thanks for joining, everyone. Yeah, I think this call, well, I don't have any presentation to make per se. I do know there are some cool updates and some progress to be shared by some of you guys. I wrote some stuff down on the agenda just based on discussions and what's been going on. Uh, you can also like always follow what's happening on the Discord inclusion list channel. But yeah, maybe the first update we could talk about would be the first Prism and Geth interop, uh, which I know, yeah, Terence and Jihoon have been working on quite a lot. I think it's very exciting. I'm like really happy, but I would actually love to hear some more about exactly the progress that has been made, how we are doing with tests ideas as well. And yeah, if Terence or Jihoon, you can share what's going on, that would be like super helpful.
Yeah, I think I can start and maybe Jinhu, I'm sure he has a lot more to add there. So, what we did was, I would say the basic minimum testing scenario. So, I guess 1 week ago, what I did was that I started overloading Fulu hard fork with Fossil, so meaning that Fossil is included in Fulu hard fork that at the for transition from Elytra to Fulu, Fossil gets activated. But then, like as time goes on, I started to realize, which with the feedback of Perry and many people, that I probably shouldn't be doing that, meaning that Fossil should be its own hard fork. That is EIP 7A05 has its own hard fork number and hard fork version. And the reason that we want to do this is because of in the long term, if we want to be more serious, that to generate tooling and to generate spec tests, you don't want some sort of dependency with Fulu. And meaning that once it gets CAFI'd, I'm not sure what the entire process is with EIP. I kind of forgot that sometimes. But once it gets CFI, once it's included for inclusion for Fulu, then we can put that back into Fulu. But right now, Fossil it's basically it's its own half fork on the Prism side. I'm also happy to provide other branch if people really want to test Fossil with Fulu or test Fossil with Elytra. That's not that much work to me. In terms of testing, it's basically a happy case right now. So what it means is that I made sure that inclusion list with the help of transaction spammer, there are transactions in the inclusion list, they are getting submitted, and then those transactions are essentially getting sent from the CL to the EL to update the block process. What we have not done is basically some sort of censorship testing, basically to make sure that the transactions that the builders or the proposers are not basically not putting in the payload that gets included through inclusion somehow. That's something that we have not verified. Um, Other things we have now verified are basically like different mempool inclusion rule, and then basically making sure that even though if there's like one honest inclusionist member, and then 15 of them are essentially ignoring transactions, that one that basically one that basically that one member is sufficient enough to say include transactions within the first few slots, basically. Yeah. Jinhoon, do you have anything to add here?
Maybe if I can just ask one question. I was wondering what you guys think about the best way to like test the actual censorship case. Like, should we censor like a specific sender address? Like what is like the most realistic test case we can make for this?
Yeah, I can start. I'm sure Jinhoon has a lot more to add there. I think there are two ways to test this, and I sort of prefer the more natural way. The first way to test this is that you add another testing endpoint on the consensus layer, which allowed any arbitrary party to submit transactions. And those transactions essentially will get included through this inclusion list mechanism. And these transactions may not exist, for example, in the public mempool, for example. That's one way to test it, do some sort of backdoor testing. And I'm not sure if this is something that we want in the Beacon API. This can just be a testing endpoint. The second option is that you actually modify the EL behavior. So say today you modify the mempool to say that I don't allow transactions from the sender address, and then you essentially you basically have some modified version for that basically, and then you say, okay, I want 15 nodes, maybe like 80% of the validators, they essentially do not run, basically run that modified version, and then you allow certain percentage of the validators run the honest version and see what happens. And based on that, we can essentially simulate censorship behavior.
Nice. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It feels like to test the one out of n property, which is what you said about like only one is honest and the rest is censoring. Maybe the second way to test, like actually modifying the mempool would allow this, but not necessarily the first one, if I understand correctly. But I don't know. Maybe just a combination of both ways to test is actually like the right way to go about this.
Right. And there are another few test cases missing. I would just point out on the Prism side that today we have this window that essentially say that after 8 seconds, that the inclusion transactions will not be counted from the tester's point of view. And then we actually do not do that. So that's definitely something that's missing in my implementation, that I'm not consider that window right now. Another thing is that we haven't tested that more than two IL scenario, meaning that if there's the two ILs from the same sender, the IL should not be counted. Basically, people should ignore them for the new payload call for the next slot. That's something that we haven't tested as well. But yeah, I had this documentation. I think I shared that earlier, and I'm definitely looking for feedback for more test cases.
Nice. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I feel like the equivocation one would be also nice to test with the cases in which like ILs or like second ILs are like just submitted at boundaries where we expect like maybe the network to split its view. That would be like particularly like interesting to test so we can check if the timings we set in the spec are actually like working and like people have enough time to determine whether like someone equivocated or not. But no, nice. Thanks a lot for sharing. And yeah, Jihoon, do you have some more to share?
Uh, yes, thanks for the great update. If I may add something to testing side, I think it feels like we need multiple client variants, like censoring one and equivocating one. And I think testing would reside in CL side, so we could use kurtosis and Ossertor. So I might try using Ossertor uh, to make the test cases somehow reproducible way. And as Terence said, we can modify EL to censor certain transactions. Which type of transactions are censored doesn't really matter in terms of functionality testing. So we could just make sure that the proposer omits certain transactions in the EL sets. So yeah, that could be possible. And for the interop work, if I share my update, so I worked on based on what Terence did. So I've made that naive interop finally work. And one lesson I want to share is that when each tester verifies IL compliance, they need to fetch IL from the previous slot. So if current slot is slot N, then they need to fetch cached ILs from slot N minus one. It's quite obvious to hear it, but it wasn't when writing code. So I hope this could save other clients time a bit. And then, yeah, and I also have a write-up regarding the interrupt. So please take a look into the doc for other details. And for my next step, I will be adding tests using probably also Tor based on test scenarios written by Terence. And I think we need to modify Dora to display IL per slot. Although I'm not sure of which information we want to add to make Dora for FOCIL, but I think just displaying IL per slot would be easier for us to test cases. And yeah, so that's all from my end. Is there any question?
Yeah, from me, but I don't want to. Okay, let me just ask. For Dora, like, do you mean ILs per slot is just like displaying every IL and every transactions in the ILs for each slot in the Explorer?
Yes, just like displaying transactions of payload, I think we can display unique set of transactions that are included in each IL. Or if you want, we can display IL of each IL committee members. So yeah, which one do you think is better?
Yeah, I feel like the raw version of like ILs per committee member will be great because then we can just do the simple union and check like what was included in the payload. But having
Mm,
like the sort of like raw inclusion list for me makes a lot of sense.
cool. Yeah.
So I just wanted to add that it might be harder because of by looking at the blog today, even after fossil, that you cannot tell which transactions came from IL because since we don't have this like IL inclusion, this like summary, we don't have that in the block builder. So you probably need some sort of like, I don't know, like a well, first of all, Beacon API, I believe NC had a PR for the Beacon API for inclusion list. So we probably need some sort of streaming endpoint that as the inclusion comes in, it basically gets streamed. We have to subscribe to the stream. I suppose this may be useful for the builder as well. And based on the streaming endpoint, that Dora will know which inclusion lists are for the slot. And because of that, you can kind of like tell like what transactions in the block are based on the inclusion list. But yeah, it probably needs more thought around that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
Do we need API for implementing it in curses in Dora? Was a question by Katya.
Yes, I guess we need some streaming API, as Terence mentioned. Maybe Terence can elaborate it a bit.
Yeah, I think you need some sort of API to get the inclusion list, basically, like whether it's streaming, whether it's just like a REST get. But yeah, I'm not like an API person here. I'm sure, yeah, there are people that are more well knowledge they can answer that.
Yeah, so the Beacon API PR has the inclusion list event already there, and we added that in Loadstar. But I'm not sure if Dora uses the events to populate data, or I guess the alternative would be a oppool API where you would just fetch for the previous slot the data.
Actually, I talked about this to Perry the other day, and he told me that he can connect me to someone, some maintainer of Dora. So yeah, maybe we can talk about this and then yeah, find a good way to implement it. I will share the update, of course.
Nice. Okay, maybe another question. I don't remember if it was included in your doc, Terence, but like one test that feels important is looking at what happens during congestion. So yeah, we need to make sure like yeah, I don't know, populate the mempool enough so blocks can be filled or stuffed and see what happens and how builders can then choose to exclude some transactions from the ILs. Yeah, I think that will just be like a very important test case to look at, and it doesn't sound like extremely easy, but we should definitely do it.
Yeah, definitely. I think for kurtosis, there's transaction spammer. That's the service we're using. But then again, like we can probably fine tune the transaction spammer to be slightly more aggressive. Because right now the inclusion list, the transactions are not nearly as full as I like to see. So yeah, definitely I will make a note of that.
Okay, awesome. And I think related to this, one other item on the agenda I noted was an actual call for helping build a mempool visualizer. So you can check it in the agenda thing, but let me post it here. It's been spec'd basically by Panda Apps, if I understand correctly, and will be useful for a bunch of cases. But I don't know if someone in the call like is inspired by this and sort of wants to contribute or take this on, it would be useful obviously for other things, but for Soul as well. So yeah, just wanted to signal this here. And then we covered the FOCIL being now its own its own fork, so that's good. Yeah, and now, yeah, I kind of wanted to open it up to maybe other clients I haven't talked as much to. I have talked a bit to Matthew about Lodestar, but if there is some more progress on your end, that would be like super nice if you could share where you guys are at.
Yeah, so for Lodestar, we've made a lot of progress in terms of implementation for the last 2 weeks. I think the basic implementation is 95% or pretty much done. We just need a couple more days for some more internal review to see if there are any missing pieces that we've missed on the implementation. Yeah, so we're getting very, very close to be ready.
Awesome.
And also, yeah, I just want to touch a little bit on the Beacon API spec. Yeah, I posted a comment about a more polished version has been opened on the public Beacon API repo with some minor modification on some of the endpoints, including produce inclusion lists should not be returning a list of inclusion lists, but instead it should be just like a list of transactions only, because I don't think VC needs the additional info of the inclusion list, including the slots or validator index or the IL committee routes. So I think only returning a list of transactions should suffice. And also for the IL committee duty endpoints, it should return the IL committee routes there. So VC, when it signs the inclusion list, it should has all the information it needs to sign. So it kind of simplifies the endpoints a little bit.
So to that point, currently I think I still needed the IL committee root to be returned because the current signature scheme is over this object, which consists of slot, inclusion list committee root, transactions, and then the validator index, right? So the VC doesn't know the inclusion list committee root. So are you saying just have the signature over the transactions and that's it, or yeah?
No. So what I'm proposing is the inclusion list committee routes is not returned by the produce inclusion list endpoint, but on the inclusion list committee duty endpoint.
But Okay, but there, I guess like, but are you calling the get duty endpoint every slot then? Because some clients only call the get duty endpoint at the epoch boundary, right? And but then if you do
Right.
that, then you don't know the inclusion list committee root stay for slot 15.
Hmm. So how Lodestar is implementing this is when the beacon node is returning like the inclusion list duty along with the inclusion list roots, the validator client will just cache the duty along with the committee roots.
Yeah, but I don't think most client call this get duty point at every slot.
Yeah, we're just doing it every epoch.
But how do you? But then the inclusion list committee root changes for every slot, right?
Doesn't it pre-compute? Doesn't
Oh,
it
so you
just
just
depends on the shuffling?
okay. Okay, that I think that kind of makes sense. Okay, I will think more about that.
Okay. But yeah, that's pretty much all the update from Lodestar.
Okay, nice. And just maybe a stupid question, but like, when you say it's like 95% there, like, are you talking about interrupt as well with like an execution client or?
No, it's just like the very, very basic implementation. We're
Okay,
just like
sounds
following
good.
the spec and just to code it up, and we're still trying to see if there's anything we're missing.
Okay, awesome. And is the logical next step is trying to interrupt or and tests, I guess?
Yes, so we have tested it locally a little bit. At least the P2P side of things is working locally. We just need to test more.
Okay, great. Yeah, awesome. Thanks a lot for sharing. It's really good to see progress on your end as well. Yeah, Jacob, I asked you, and I know you've not looked at Lighthouse yourself, but Ethan had some updates. Can you just share where things are at if you're here? Yeah.
I didn't get any super specific updates from Eton, but I think we're just moving that fork over into the Sigma Prime repository, and where they will take ownership of it and kind of drive it forward.
Okay, nice. Yeah. Okay, that's what I had in mind. So because before you were looking at it, and now is there like a dedicated person even in the call for Lighthouse, or like are they just like planning on just taking this on?
I don't see that anyone from the Lighthouse is in the call, but yeah, my understanding is that Ethan will be taking it over. I'm not sure that he has 100% bandwidth allocated to it, but my understanding is that he'll have at least 50% bandwidth allocated to it. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Great. Thanks. And you've been also working a bit on the REST side of it, which is also quite nice
Correct.
because
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm yeah, debugging some interop stuff with Prism. And yeah, getting some help from Terrence there. But yeah,
Okay. So
hoping
the
to have
goal is
things
like
up soon.
interrupt with between Prism and REST.
Until there's another CL that is
Right.
available to test with. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Nice. Thanks. Are there any other updates? Katya, I saw um you did share some things in the Discord channel as you have been working on this, so was wondering if you had anything to share.
I started working. So as far as the kurtosis works now, I started working on the dashboard. So today I just worked with the current metrics I found in the FOCIL in Prism. Yeah, and I'm going to proceed with it as soon as I have any updates. I will share in the chat. The one proposal from me is to, as we're going to standardize metrics, can we just standardize the names? Something like Bacon inclusion list. Every metric should begin with it for consensus clients. If you don't mind, this is how we do on for PeerDAS. For execution client, I'm not sure yet. I'll ask Perry. I think that execution clients don't have any standard for metrics names. Maybe someone knows. If not, yeah, I will propose something like exec or something. So I think for the next call, I will have already something on dashboard. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, great. Awesome. Yeah, I'm not sure about like the standards and everything, but feel free to reach out also if you have questions about this, and maybe we can make some standards from this effort. That might be like also like a good way to do things moving forward.
Yes, great. Thank you.
And does anyone else want to share updates? I don't talk to all clients, so I'm not sure. Yeah, Mehdi?
Yeah, an update from Teku team. We made some good progress on FOCIL. Basically, we have implemented the peer-to-peer layer, and we're working on the RPC side of it. Basically, we still don't have a working implementation, but we're left with the fork choice changes. And probably from this week, we'll have some more people working on FOCIL, so we might go a little bit faster to at least a minimal working implementation, hopefully in 2 weeks or so. Yeah, that's
Okay,
it.
awesome. Yeah, this is great. Okay, so yeah, we have a couple of people that are kind of aiming for working in implementation by the next call, which is cool. And then we can sort of like, I guess, try different combinations of CL and EL clients with all the tests and like actually like get some metrics with Katya on how things are doing. That sounds like a good plan, honestly. It's really great to see some progress. Does anyone else want to share something? Yeah, then we can probably keep this one short, to be honest, and see how we are doing next call. Yeah, I'll also have like probably something to present. I want to get feedback on about like trying to get privacy for IL committee members and what you guys maybe think of it. I was also like, okay, maybe one idea I wanted to share is like what do people think of having transactions? Well, okay, maybe I'll wait until actually I will just like do a cliffhanger and maybe I'll actually share like more details on the next call. But I was like trying to see how we can evaluate FOCIL once it goes on mainnet if it does. And maybe like trying to have ways to see who is censoring and who is not censoring by including some transactions in the mempool to check that everything is going well, but that might be for later, and I can share more like well-formed intuitions and thoughts maybe on the next call. If that's it for everyone, we can probably call this meeting and get half an hour. Thanks again for everyone that came and for sharing the updates. It's really nice to see progress on like mini clients, and now that we have Interop, I'm actually very excited to get like some results and tests and see how we are doing with all the different scenarios we can kind of think of. So yeah, thanks a lot, and see you guys in 2 weeks.